Check, check. Hello everybody and welcome to the live session today. I think everything is working okay. As far as I can tell from my end, everything looks good. So please do let me know, drop a little comment in the chat or the comments to let me know if you can see me and if you can hear me okay. And we can get started. Lovely. Thank you, leader. Brilliant news. Fantastic. I can hardly believe it. Everything's working. No doubt something will go wrong at some point. There's too much tech involved. So welcome to the first open session I've done for quite a while, I think. I'm planning to do one every day this week, just for fun. And I've got a really lovely little subject, which is this apple, which is called a chasely kernel, which is quite a rare variety. I think it's a traditional Gloucestershire variety of apple. And the reason I've chosen this is because it's a relatively simple subject, but it has some interesting stuff about it too. So here's the plan for this week, okay? Today I'm going to be talking mainly about value. And I'm going to show you a way that you can use a digital value scale together with a real world value scale to absolutely nail the values if you're painting from a photo. Slightly more complicated if you're painting from life, but you can still do it. Tomorrow is going to be about hue. So I'm going to do some color mixing, mixing the colors of this apple, and I'm going to talk about how Munsell helps really nail the colors, okay? The local colors and the light and the shadow. So that's going to be Wednesday. Thursday is going to be all about chroma, which is pretty much my favorite subject to do with color. Doesn't get much airtime, but I think it's really, really important. And on Friday is the big one. So on Friday, I'm going to bring it all together. I'm going to do a stream, maybe a little bit later, so it's not such a horrendous time for people who are on Pacific time. And I'm going to paint a full alla prima finished painting of this apple. Okay, so if you have a look at the comments, you ought to be able to see the download links for the reference photos, and there's also a link there for the value scale that I'm using. So will this be recorded? Yes, it is being recorded. I'm streaming live to Facebook and YouTube at the same time. So it should be recorded on both. So I will post the links on my respective Facebook profile and my YouTube channel, and I'll also email them out, so anyone who's on my email list will get a link to the replay. So yes, it is being recorded. All the sessions, as far as I'm aware, are going to be recorded. Probably on Facebook. You can definitely get them on YouTube. Okay, so if you are not subscribed to my website and you want to make really sure that you get them, then pop over to learningtosee.co.uk or just search for Paul Foxton Paintings or something like that in Google. And there's a subscribe page there where you can join up, okay? I'm going to switch over now. Actually, before I do, I'll just show you, because some of you may not have seen me stream live before. So this is basically my setup. So I have this camera here that I'm speaking to you on. I have another camera just over here, which is on the easel. And here I've got 10" by 8" ampersand gesso board, and then I've got another camera which goes down onto the palette here. So I'll switch over so you can see how that looks. Let's have a look. Hopefully you should now be able to see everything. Thanks so much everybody for coming along. It's really good to see you as well. So this is the camera on the easel, and then over here is the camera which goes straight down from above onto the palette. Let's get the tea out of the way. This incidentally is lemon and ginger, and I've got a bit of extra honey in there, yum yum. And this is the apple. And one of the things, I think probably the thing I love most about this apple is the way these little dots go through it. So I'm going to be trying to catch all of those as we paint. But today is all about value, okay? So This is the value scale that I was talking about. It's from Paul Kentore. You can get it on eBay. There's a link to this. It's laminated, and it gives you the entire Munsell scale from right down the bottom to right up to the top in half steps. Insanely useful, and it's insanely cheap. It's like $10. So you can also see, hopefully up on the top right of the picture, I've got two versions of the reference photo there, and one of them has a load of numbers on it and a value scale, and those are the values, and I'm going to show you once we get started how I found those and how I selected them. But the first thing to do is to mix up a value scale. So titanium white, raw umber. It's only going to be a simple, like a 5-step scale, okay? And black. You could use just black and white, or you could use just raw umber and white. It's not the end of the world. For me personally, I'm not that bothered for value studies about whether they're perfect neutrals or not, as long as they're fairly consistent. And I like to let them lean a little bit towards brown, towards the raw umber. But we do want to match some of these values, okay? Paul Ranson says, what software do you use for your live stream? Well, I'm actually streaming through a piece of software called OBS, which I hook up to a cloud service called Restream. So if you have any questions as we go along, just pop them in the comments and I will attempt to keep up with them. Okay, let's get going. So the first thing I'm going to do is mix a middle value. Okay, so this is value 5. Actually, what I'll do, whilst I'm doing this, I'm going to switch over like full screen to the palette, and I'm going to take the reference photos off as well so you can really see what I'm doing here. Thank you, Suzanne. Good to see you too. So I'm going to start off. So this is like a value 5. In Munsell terms, we call this a value 5, the middle value. Start off with a bunch of whites. I'm going to slap a bit of raw umber in there, big splodge of black, and then start mixing them and see what I get. Now, the nice thing about having this independent scale is that once you get used to it, you can be sure that you're always mixing the same values, and it's really, really useful. But there's another level that it's even more useful on, which I'm going to hopefully demonstrate some of for you today. Going to probably be going for about an hour today, I would think, something like that. So let's see how I'm doing. This is like a value 5. If you don't have a value scale, you just need to judge these by eye. So this wants to be like perceptually between black, which is your lowest value, and white, which is your highest. How have I done? A little bit dark. You can just see that poking out. So I'm going to add a little bit of white and bring the value up. Now this is a big old splodge of paint I've got here, and there's a good reason for that, because I'm going to divide it up in a minute. So do let me know if you're having a bash at painting along. It's always interesting for me to hear. Right, pretty much bang on. Okay, so that's value 5, which is in the middle of the scale. Now, some people get a bit confused about the value numbers in Munsell, because in Munsell, 1 is low value and 9 is high value. And some people are used to them the other way around, you know. So then the next one I'm going to mix is a 7. So if I take some of this, my 5, and I add more white. So again, if you don't have a value scale, why not? I mean, seriously, grab this value scale. It's nothing to do with me. I don't get any money for if anybody buys it. It is purely, I recommend it purely because I think it's brilliant. Really, really useful. And it's Munsell and it's accurate. And there's some very useful things about that, which I'll show you in a little while once we get into putting some paint on. So let's check that. Am I a 7? Pretty much bang on, actually. That will do nicely. So now I've got a 5 and a 7. So the next one I want, if you're extremely good at maths, you probably already figured out it's a 3. So I'm going to get a little bit, just a little bit of my 5, a tiny bit this time. Add a bunch of raw umber. And a little bit of black. I kind of like them to go more towards the brown as they go down the value scale. It's a little bit like, you know, when you're working in North Light, you get the shadows tend towards orange a little bit. And if it's a bright sunny day and the light is reflecting off the blue sky, then the lights will be pulled towards blue a little bit. Oh, okay, if we must. Cool lights and warm shadows. Is this a value 3? Yeah, pretty good. Now, granted, I've been doing value scales like this for, well, quite a long time, so I can do them pretty quickly, you know. Oh, we got a few people painting along. That's brilliant. I'm going to be going at a bit of a clip today, but the goal for today is just to nail the values and to do a really simplified value blocking, but to make sure that those values are good, right? So the reason when I'm doing a value study, I don't really bother doing mixing any more values than this. I mean, you absolutely can. You could mix every step here if you wanted. It would take you a little while. But I find this is enough. So this is the top of the value scale. This is the bottom of the value scale. And I've got 3 in between. So I've got a 5-step scale. Anything that I want in between, I can mix as I go along from what I've got. So you need to make sure you've got plenty of paint here. If you don't have enough paint on the palette, you will very possibly run out, and you don't want that to happen. No, sir. Right, I want to bring the photos back up. So now we can see everything again. Hello, Iris. Good to see you too. Roxy, you're very welcome. I'm feeling much better, thank you. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, you don't absolutely have to do this, but I always do this, okay? I prepare the panel. So this is just an ampersand gesso board panel, so that's like an acrylic gesso. It's probably just like acrylic paint with a little bit of chalk in it or something. So put a little bit of linseed oil into my little pot. This is cold pressed I'm using here, cold pressed linseed oil. You can use refined as well, it just dries quicker. And this is, I used pure gum terps as my solvent, but you can use Gamsol or something like that. So that's like probably a little bit, roughly half and half, but a little bit more oil than solvent. Mix them up together. And then, this is a rough old brush I don't really like. Cover the panel. And anyone who's wondering about why my oil is so yellow, I've been wondering that too. And I think it's a new bottle, and I think it's because it's just been stored out of light for a long time, and I need to stick it in sunlight to bleach it again. But you know, you can do that with paintings as well. If you keep them in a cupboard forever and it's dark, you know, they tend to darken, and then you pop them in sunlight again and they lighten up again. So basically, just cover the panel and then wipe as much of it off as possible, and you end up with a very, very thin layer to paint into, and it really lets the brushes glide around. It really makes the painting part of things go much more easily. Okay. So there's a grid on the photo, right? So I'm going to grid up my panel. So this is basically just in order to make the painting bit go more quickly. So this is a 1/4 inch synthetic with a very flat. Very flat bristles. So I get a little bit of my lightest colour. I've got a bit of oil on it first, a bit of my lightest colour, which is the value 7. You could do this by eye, you can measure it. This is how I normally do it. I'm going to divide it into 4. So this is 8 inches, so that's 2, 4, 6. And then up the side, I want 2.5, 5, didn't really get that, and 7.5. Obviously showing off my incredible math skills again there. And I like to do it like this. You can do, obviously you could actually do the whole thing with the ruler if you want. But I think it's like, this is kind of nice as arm. So it's hard to do this and talk. It's nice as a little sort of a warm-up. Get the brush to the surface and feel it move, you know. So I'm doing this entirely from my shoulder, not from my wrist. My elbow isn't involved at all. My entire arm is from my shoulder. So it's a light pressure of the brush on the panel, and then just move your arm either down or from left to right, or from right to left, I suppose, if you're left-handed. And with a bit of practice, you can get a pretty good grid this way. It doesn't have to be perfect, but pretty good. Oh, sorry, knocked the mic. We probably had some incredibly annoying interference on the mic there, sorry about that. What size am I working, says Michelle? 10 by 8 inches. Art is always worth nicking off work for, right? Oh, thanks, Michelle. So I'm going to whiz through this fairly quickly, but this is basically, I'm going to be sending out the links to the replay of all of these sessions, so you'll be able to watch them again and slow it down if you want to make life a little bit easier. But this is basically the way I approach drawing things out. The apple is the main event in this show, so I get the top point, the bottom point, the furthest right point, and the furthest left point, which is handily right on there. And then I look for where the outlines are cutting the grid. You need to try and do this independent of thinking about apple or, you know, anything like that. Just look for how far along these grid lines the outline is cutting. That's half the work done for you, like, you know, in a matter of seconds. It's kind of flat across the top. Ish. This is just going to be like a rough blocking. And then with just a few straight lines, we can get pretty close. See, this apple, its shape has a particular character, and you know, I don't want just some random kind of shape here. You know, I want this to reflect this particular apple. Nice. So there is also we have the lines of the cloth. I'll do a little bit on the cloth today. Probably won't do a lot. We'll keep it very basic. So that is pretty much the plane change from the surface the apple is on to the front of the cloth. And then there's the line at the back where the cloth joins the background. And then there's a cast shadow which comes in from the left and joins the apple about here. And then the apple itself has a cast shadow. So I'm going to put that in. Now, I like to think of cast shadows. When I'm looking at painting, blocking in something like this, I'm thinking about areas of light and shadow. I'm not necessarily thinking, I'm trying not to think apple and not to think cloth. I'm trying to think light and shadow. Render the couch was cold pressed linseed oil and a little bit of terps mixed together, painted on and then wiped off. And I also want to get a rough idea of the division between light and shadow on this apple. And you have to kind of judge this to an extent by eye. There's a lot of reflected light up here on the bottom of the apple from light which is coming down onto the cloth and up into the shadow. I would say that's pretty much the division between light and shadow. Something like that. We've got our little highlight here, the lightest part of the apple. And that's going to be enough for now. Okay. So I'm going to show you something about how you can see on the right hand side of the screen, there's a photo there with some numbers on it. Let me just do a quick screen share for you, and I'll show you how those numbers came about. Okay, so this is the photo in Photoshop, and Photoshop has this nice little tool called the eyedropper, apparently. And what you can do is you can click on any area. So say I wanted to find out what this area was. If I set this up here to be like, I usually have 11 by 11 pixels. If it's too small, it won't be useful reading. Click on there and you will see, if you're on the right layer, you will see that this square up here changes. So if you open that up, you see this, and the bit that we're interested in is the L value here. So that's 37, right? So in Munsell terms, that's a value 3.5. Down here, that's like 89. So that's a value 9 in Munsell terms. This highlight on the apple, that's value 8 because the number is 81. So after doing a bunch of those things, you end up with this. And you can also check each of these against this value scale. So this value scale pretty much matches the one I've got on my palette. So this is 3.5 over here, okay? So there's the 3.5. But if you see, if I click on these, like there would be the 3, that actually is exactly 30. So it's 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So that's like value 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on my scale. And it just makes it way, way easier to get a rough idea of what the values are on the photo before you start. Jim, you should absolutely go with what you think then. You have to kind of, it's not always easy to judge that light and shadow. I can kind of infer it because I know that I had this set up on my still life stand. I took this photo earlier on today, you know, with natural light, and I pretty much know how the light falls on rounded objects. It's a little bit more difficult to tell on this apple because the color also changes from light to shadow as well. There's a slight change in the locals independent of the light and shadow, I should say. You could, for instance, decide that it was there if you wanted to, but I'm pretty sure that this area down here is light. You know, and the apple, I think, has a slight bulge here, so there's a suggestion of shadow there, but I want to really just have a reasonably clear idea just for myself of what's going to be light and shadow. And as I say, that's something you just have to judge for yourself. Sometimes it's very clear, like if this was a white object with no variation of color on it, would be clear. It would be really clear. So in terms of values, like over here, I've got, just looking at the background, that's a 3.5, right? Over here, I've got a 4.5. And the nice thing about this little value scale is it does have half steps. So that's 4.5, okay? And that's 3.5. So because I've got some values mixed out here, I can actually find those like really, really closely. So I know that this is 3, right? So if I take my bit of my 3 and I add a little bit of the value above it, pretty much guaranteed that's going to get me to like a 3.5. Unless I overshoot and then it'll go to a 4. But this is good practice just doing this because you're judging, like you want it to be between these two but closer to this one. Looks good to me, 3.5. But I also want 4.5, which is, so if I take a bit of my 5, so that's just below the 5, and add a little bit of the 3, And you might think these steps don't make much difference. It's like a single step of the value scale, but they really, really do. 4.5. Bit light still. Put some more 3 in it. So the nice thing about this value scale is it's laminated, so you can actually put the paint directly on it. And as long as you remember to do it in plenty of time, which I, to be fair, don't always. Okay, that's good. You can just wipe it off. Nice clean value scale again. As long as you remember to do it. Hello Flo, nice to see you. John, good to see you too. Loss of sound quality. How is the sound for everybody? Do let me know if there's a problem with the sound. I think I might have, I may conceivably have messed something up with the mic, and I just knocked it, but it should be okay. So, you know, I just want to get those values on there, right? So I'm going to get a nice big, this is a Cornelison's hog, size 6. So it's about a 1/2 inch. Get a little bit of my couch on it. Now I call this working in the brush. Decorators do this and I do it too. So that you're not going in with a completely dry brush. So I want my 3.5 over here. How dark does that look? It looks too dark, right? But that's because the panel is white. And I want my 4.5 over there. So let's just fill this in. Now, me personally, I like my backgrounds nice and brushy. I know some people like to finish them really carefully, you know, which is just an aesthetic choice. And today is only going to be like a really simplified blocking anyway. One thing to watch with this though is you need to make sure that if you've mixed an accurate value, you need to make sure that it goes down opaquely, because if it doesn't cover opaquely, then you'll end up with a slightly lighter value than you've actually mixed. It's not the end of the world, but you know. Sometimes you may find if there's a slight loss of picture quality or sound quality, it might be internet connection at your end, and sometimes refreshing it will sort it out. Okay, so that's pretty useful. Now this shadow back here, I've also, you know, found a value for that. I reckon that's about a 5, which is pretty easy to put in because I've actually got my 5 already mixed. So, you know, it's almost like it makes it too easy. I don't have to worry about what value that is. I pretty much know. This value actually gets a little bit darker as it goes down to the bottom. So let's let this go down to 3. You know, so these things are guides, but you still need to judge and you still need to use your eyes. They're like anchor points. You know, they give you an idea of where things should be. Cast shadow is roughly, most of it is about a value 3, which we already have mixed. So hopefully you can see like how quickly you can start to build up a picture with accurate values. And obviously it gets darker as it gets close to the apple and it gets lighter as it gets further away. We'll sort out the edges in a second. Oh, Kitten wants out. I better let him out of the studio. Go on out, little man. Yes. Hungry boy. Go on. So this whole top plane, I'm going to do it without any kind of folds or anything to begin with, like really simplified, and then we'll start working into it a little bit, you know. It's roughly a value 9. Now, I don't have a value 9, but I have white, titanium white, remember, which is, in terms of this value scale, it's like, it's off the scale slightly. It's like 9.5 titanium white. It's the highest value you can get in oil paint. Drop it just a little bit with some of my 7. Check it on the scale. How am I doing? Is it a 9? Yeah, it looks good to me. I'm going to change brushes now because this one has quite low values on it. And I generally like to have 2 or 3 going so that I can make sure that my values stay pretty true. So here's another one, the same Cornelison hog, size 6, about ferrule is about 1/2 inch. Little bit of oil on it, grab my value 9. We'll paint that in. And as soon as you start to cover the surface, the value relationships start to work. And bit by bit, you start to get a feeling of depth and form. And the things that will create the depth and the form are the values being right, and then the edges. And we're going to look at handling the edges in a minute. So it's not just Munsell we're talking about today, not just value. It's going to be a little bit darker as it recedes, so I'm going to mix between those here. So this part behind the cast shadow is going to be a little bit darker. This is what I call, what I fondly refer to as banging it in. No, just quickly getting those values in so you can see where you are. Laurel says, where did you get the grey mixing palette? I actually got this from a site called prolificpainter.com. Which is really good. Well, I've got a little bit of, let me knock off the big light because I've got a little bit of glare on there. And then we can, that's looking better now. Got a little bit of glare on the easel. I'm just going to adjust the exposure of the camera a little bit now, so the values are right. If I can get my head out of the way, that will help. It should be okay, I think. So the main value at the front here is like about a 6. There's this big fold here, but I'm going to ignore that for the moment. So we know how to get a 6. So here's our 5. Get a little bit of the 5. And here's our 7. Mix them together, we get a 6. You can do all of this by eye just with a 5-step scale like this, but it really helps, I think, to really make sure that these values are nailed. So here is my value 6. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to do the whole of the front plane of the cloth in this value for now. Whether we'll bother actually putting any of the folds in or not is, well, it depends, you know, we'll see. So no edge handling at all yet. We're not doing any softening on the edges, no blending, we're just putting in value blocks. But if you squint down, I like them at this stage, because if you squint down, it's already like you can feel there must be an object here because you can see the shadow, you know. So at this stage, before I go on to painting this, the actual apple, I like to sort out my edge handling, okay? Because it's easier to do it now because, for instance, this is a cast shadow, okay? So a cast shadow gets softer the further away it is from the object that casts it, which means it's going to be harder here and softer here. So this is how I do the edge handling. Hatch. And the hatches get wider as I get closer to the apple, wipe off the brush, and then drag across. And the nice thing about doing this before you paint the apple is that you can go into the apple and then wipe it back. Gives you a really nice soft edge there. Similarly here, this is a cast shadow of the apple. So the further away it gets from the apple, the softer the edges get. So big hatches, smaller, 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 stop. Wipe off the brush and then drag. Again, I can actually go into the surface of the apple to get a nice soft edge there and then wipe it back because I haven't painted any of the values of the apple in yet. Okay. Now I would like these edges at the back to be soft as well. Even though you can see them clearly, I like to really push the background back by having really soft edges towards the back. And this can be softened some more. And this edge here also needs to be soft because this is a cloth. It's not a table edge, so it's a rounded corner. And you can see on the photo as well that this wants to be softened, but it wants to be softened evenly all the way along. Just touch quickly, wipe off the brush and then drag. And it's a really fast way to get a nice soft edge. It takes a bit of practice, to be fair. And if you don't have enough paint on there, it doesn't really work because you lift up too much paint when you do the drag. But that's a great way to get a nice soft edge, and already we're starting to create some space. Hello Cash, nice to see you. Render, the value scale is, if you go onto eBay and you look for, okay kitten, I'm coming. If you go onto eBay and you look for, come on then. No, you have to come in. No, you have to come in. I'm not coming out. You have to come in. Come on. Come on. I'm closing the door. Look, I'm trying to paint, kitten. You've got to come inside. Oh, you want to go out again? What he really wants is for me to go and sit down in the living room with him and give him a pat. So now we're starting to see there's a little bit of space. He's immediately scratching at the door again. Okay. This is absolutely the last time, kitten. Are you coming in or not? No. Okay. I'll give him with 10 seconds until he scratches on the door again. You can also, if you have it like a really nice soft brush, like this is a watercolor brush. If you want to get these transitions really soft, it's dry, there's nothing on it. You can just kind of very light pressure kind of flick over, and that gives you a really nice sort of an atmosphere to it all as well. So let's go on to the apple. I'm going to get two brushes out actually. Cornelis and Hogs again, slightly smaller this time. Hi Claire, nice to see you. So what do we have over in, this is the darkest part of the shadow. We call it the core shadow. We want a 1.5. That is a low, low value. Okay. So actually, in Munsell terms, ivory black is a 0.5, and raw umber is about a 1. So I'm going to get raw umber with a little bit of black in it, and I'm going to mix in a little bit of my 3. Check it against the value scale. 1.5 we want. A little bit too dark. That looks pretty good to me. A little bit of oil on the, look, what I do to get a little bit of oil on a clean brush is just dip it into my medium like that. Wipe it off. And this is the darkest part of the shadow, which is just around here. So this, in the color version, this is going to be like a deep red around this area of the apple around here. Can you hear him scratching at the door? He's a nightmare sometimes. He's a very old man, so I'm very indulgent of him. He's 20 years old. Come on then, come in. Come on. Come on. I know what you want. Come on. He's asking me to come. It would be a bit annoying if I stopped painting for like 10 or 15 minutes right now, wouldn't it, to pat the cat. So what happens over here is that we're still in shadow in this area here, but we've got light coming down, hitting the cloth and coming up into the shadow, which raises the value. It can be difficult to guess what value that is, unless you have one of these scales in Photoshop, and the scale that I'm using, which by the way, on the replay, I'll give you a link to the digital scale so you can use that. And it's actually what we want here is about a value 3. So it's very, very common. Parts of it will go slightly higher in value than that, but it's very, very common to overstate the value of the reflected light and to get it too light. Going to be a little bit lighter as we go down to the bottom, so I'll bring that up a little bit with some 5. So at the other extreme of the apple, around this side, we've got at the top around here, we've got like about a value 6. So this is my light brush. I've got a 6 mixed already, so I can just pick some of that up. And that's this whole area around here. Remember, what we're looking for is very simplified blocking to begin with. If you get your initial statements strong, looking at the big picture, not getting hung up in details, sort out the values of the overall scheme right at the beginning. Then you can add as much detail as you want later. As long as you stick to the overall values. So down here it gets a bit darker again, it's like a 4.5. So I already have a 4.5 mixed, which is handy. So by the time we get down to here, a lot of the change in value here is the color. So the apple gets more green as it goes up here and faces the light. Let me show you the apple. So it gets more green up here, and then it's slightly darker here because of the local. The red is a lower value than the green. And then we're going to get a little bit darker as we move across the form towards the shadow. If you're having problems with the video, sometimes it helps to refresh the page. Most likely, as far as I can tell, I'm streaming with a pretty steady rate here. So if there's a bit of skipping, it generally means that there's a problem at your end. So it's more than likely internet connection. So Jim says, amazing how the 3D form pops immediately. Yeah, I mean, all we've got to do now is to put in the highlight, which we want a value 8 for, which I don't have mixed yet. Now, it would be easy to just bang in there and put some white in there, you know, but that would look wrong. It wouldn't read right. It's actually a value 8, which we can mix. So if I get some white, this is a 7, remember, like in this big splodge here. So I'll mix those two together. I've got my scale to guide me. The big value of this, now, you could be forgiven for thinking, but hang on a minute, Paul. This is reducing it to painting by numbers. But the really useful thing about this is that you get to practice getting your values absolutely right. You get to feel what it's like. You get to learn things about what colors things should really be, what values things should really be. And then after a bit of practice with a method like this, when you go back to working from life, you will be way, way better. What happens when you just practice eyeballing stuff, generally speaking, you practice getting it wrong. So you get really, really good at getting your values wrong, and you'll be struggling and you're frustrated and looking back at the picture and trying to think, well, what is it? What am I missing? If you have the experience of getting your values right repeatedly, you make progress way, way faster. So we want a softer edge here because this is the Terminator. You know, I've chosen as the Terminator. Jim, yes, I'm going to darken that bit. Don't say anything, I'm going to darken it, okay? I'll get there in a minute. So this needs to be softened. I'm just going to do it in the same way as the rest. So how wide you make these hatches gives you really fine control over how much you want to soften those edges. So all we have working for us here is values and edges. Well, admittedly drawing, but I mean, this is a fairly simple shape. So we just soften these edges so we don't have any hard transitions. And immediately we have more of an impression of form. I'm going to now can start to think about what needs to change. So the cast shadow looks a little wrong because there is a fold here. Do you want me to do some folds? Shall I do some work on the folds as well? You tell me if you want to see, you know, how it can also help me put in the folds. At the moment, I mean, this is like, you saw how simplified that was, right? But there's the 3D shape sitting there, you know, it just kind of appeared. I think the background needs to come down in value. Might have been a little bit off on judging that. So I'm going to bring that down a bit. So at this point, I start thinking about what do I want to change? And it might not always be just getting as close to the photo as you possibly can. It might be like, you know, if I make this darker here, it's going to make this edge of the apple really pop out. So let's bring it down just on this side. And also, it's a bit stronger compositionally. It shows the form better. I'll do that edge again. But hopefully you can see now by going right up to over the edge of the apple here with my edge handling, you get a soft edge behind a hard edge, and that really gives it like a feeling of depth. I've got a little bit of a gap here between my core shadow and my background, so I want to sort that out. That was 4.5, right? So let's just, you can also use this to start to sort out. When this gets incredibly exciting is when you do it with color, and it works exactly the same way, you know. So I'm gonna, tomorrow, I might only do mixing tomorrow just to show you how to nail these colors, but I might also do a quick study as well. We'll see how we go. But my plan is, so tomorrow I'm going to be talking about hue. On Thursday, I'm going to do another stream and I'm going to be talking about chroma, the big one. It's like people don't think about chroma all that much, but it's really important, you know. My drawing of my cast shadow is pretty appalling, so let's sort that out. And on the final day, on Friday, I'm going to do a slightly longer workshop. I'm going to do an alla prima painting of this subject, try and make it as good as I possibly can. And you'll see all of the stuff that we've been talking about, that I've been showing you over the week, come together in a painting. Yes, of a simple subject, but nonetheless for that, I don't think. People get a little bit snotty about still life and think that it's not serious painting, but I tend to disagree. Little ball. Hello, Janet. Nice to see you. Oh, Klaus. Did I pronounce your name right, or is it Claes or Claes or Cleese? Anyway, says, I'm curious how you will add the spots as those fall in different values. Yes, we'll do a bit of that. A few people will really want to see folds, right? You want to see some folds. Everybody wants a fold or two. Okay, I think we can do that, can't we? I'm going to use the same brushes pretty much. So this dark shadow here, you know, this triangular shadow of this fold here, I've already figured out the value and it was a 2.5. So here's my 3. So if I go just a little bit below that, and really all I want to do is get the shape in right. To begin with, get the value in, get the shape in right, and then I want to sort out the edges. Comes up to about here. It gets a little bit more complicated once you've covered the panel, because any color that I paint on there now is going to mix with what's already there. So if I put down, if I'm going for a 2.5 and I put a 2.5 down, what I'm actually going to get is something which is slightly lighter because it's going to mix with what's already there, you know. And this is, again, it's the same, getting this stuff to work is the same. It's about values and edge handling. We've got a slightly darker area here which is what picks out the other side of this fold. So we can't just bang these in, or bang them in first, but then we've got to be thinking about our edges as well. This whole plane gets a little bit darker as it goes to the right. So because I've got my anchor points in, I can do a lot of this by eye now. Don't really need to check the values too much. But I don't want to get into details yet. It's all about the broad shapes and then edges. So it's going to get lighter down here. On the very outside of it here, we're going right up to the same value of the cloth, which was a 9. So here, because when you think about it, it makes sense because this part of the form is bending that way, so it's facing the light. So it's going to be slightly lighter. A lot of painting is thinking about the plane that you're painting and how it's oriented to the light. It's a little bit lighter on this side too. Then there's a slightly darker bit in the middle. Up here it's kind of blown out. You can't really see much difference there. Maybe a slightly higher value right on the edge there. So I'm going to use a softer brush this time for doing the edge handling because it gives me a bit more control. This is a 1/2 inch as well. This is a Winsor & Newton Scepter Gold synthetic flat. So if I want to soften this, same thing, hatch across, wipe off and then drag. And that starts to look like a shadow. And remember what I was saying earlier on about the edge of a cast shadow gets harder the closer it gets to the object that casts it. Now the object that's casting this shadow is this fold. So the edge will be harder here and then it will get softer, 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 softer. Harder here and then a little bit softer as it goes away. Granted, it does take a little bit of practice, you know, to get this edge handling thing. I do have an exercise for it, actually, if anyone would be interested to see it. Soft-ish edge here because the fold is turning away from the light. I actually need that plane to be in there, which is going to be slightly darker. So same as we had a light plane here, on this side we have a slightly darker plane because it's turning away from the light. I think my shadow is probably not quite dark enough, so it's going to be especially dark here where it crosses the plane change of there, because less light can get in there. Soften these edges. This is quite a hard edge, this one on the left, but the one on the inside here is softer. And we need to soften this edge because we darkened that value there, so we need to get a softer edge there again that we lost. And granted, it needs a little bit more fiddling, but you get the idea. Start to create a feeling of a fold. And interestingly, I think the value of the top plane there goes down a little here, just a little around this area, and that kind of shows up this fold a little bit there too. And there's a few little bits of folds down here, nothing very obvious though. Edge handling is the thing. Edge handling, I would say, is like, it's, for me, in importance, it's up there with values. I think it doesn't get anything like the attention that it really needs. So I need this edge of this shadow to get gradually tighter here, and the shadow gets smaller as this fold gets closer to the tabletop. And then this edge softens more the further it goes away. There would also be some light drop off because the light is coming from the left, so there'll be some light drop off over here, so this value here will be going down a little bit. So hopefully, I mean, you can see like how roughly I'm painting this. I'm literally slapping it on, but right on the edge, you get a higher value. But because the edges are handled and the values are nailed, you can get away with murder, basically, with your brush handling. You can be really, really expressive with your brush handling if your values are right and your edges are nicely handled, you know. So let's have a little look at yeah, I'm gradually going down in brushes. How many brushes am I using so far? 6. Oh, tell a lie. 7. Oh, and I use this one a little bit as well. 8. I go through a lot of brushes when I paint, has to be said. Actually, this one is lovely for doing a little bit of softening of this edge here. You know, personally, I like brushy paintings. I like them to be kind of loose and expressive. But, you know, if you want to do really fine transitions, this is a good way to do them. So I'm kind of liking this at the moment. It has a sort of a sculptural, vaguely sculptural quality to it. I'm going to soften some of this around here, just with gentle flicks. So what's interesting about these little spots on the apple is that means that we have another set of values to think about, a light and shadow for those little spots. So I think I need to, my highlight has got a little bit too big, so I'm going to work up into it a little bit and make it a bit more under control. There we go. So in the light, those spots are about a value 6. Lower than you think. How do I know? Well, frankly, because I checked them earlier on. In the same way. So I'll get a smaller brush. A little bit of oil on it, wipe it off, value 6. In the light, have I got a value 6? I'll check it to make sure. Yep, that's good. So on the light side, these little spots are about 6. Actually, here they'll be lighter than that because let's go just a little bit above the 7, because here we're in the light anyway. So this is the value that I think they're going to be up here. Then as we come down into the shadow here, they're going to go down. So I'm gradually going to work down the value scale. So I'm going down. Now I'm like about a 6. Because we're actually the light is hitting the apple here, so this is further away. So these little spots go down gradually in value as well as you move down the apple. I'm not bothering about whether they're accurate to the apple or not. That one is a bit too big and a bit too light. But as we go across here, they get darker, so because there's less light there. So let's go down to, say, a 5, and hopefully they'll still show here. Yeah. So this is I'm going quite a way down in value. Then I'm going to go down to a 4. About a 4, let's check that. So I'm gradually stepping down the scale, not dark enough. About a 4. So in the shadow area, I'm going to put them in about a value 4. Then when we get up into the shadow, they'll be even darker than that. So I'm going to go down to a 3. And I can still show some of them in here. So soften them a little bit so they're not too hard. So in the same way as the overall surface of the apple goes down in value from light to shadow, so do those little dots. It's going to be fun when we bring those in color. That will be even more fun. But it's mostly about value control. You know, that's mostly what's going on there. The edge, because an apple has quite a matte surface, the edge of the highlight is softened as well. If it was a very shiny apple and I'd been polishing it, then the edges of the highlight would be stronger. I think that can come up a tiny bit in value in places. Because remember that the values that I chose on the photo with the numbers on were general values, so there's always going to be some variation. And I think just around here, where the light is stronger, the apple is going to be a little bit lighter. And it's also, it gets darker as we go around here as well. So really I should have done this before I put the dots in. And I think that's mostly caused by like a bump in the surface, like an irregularity in the surface there, I think. So there we go, really quick value study. I would like to soften that more. I can't do it neatly now, I can't get it behind the apple, but. So hopefully that shows you, all I wanted to do today was to show you the basic method. I went a little bit further with the painting than I meant to. Do you paint the lights thicker and the darks thinner in this stage? It does work, yes, but more for a finished painting. I mean, for a fairly quick value study like this, I'm pretty much just whacking it on. And also, I'm not really trying to create, you know, a beautiful piece of work here. I'm trying to illustrate some concepts more than anything else. So I'm doing everything pretty quickly. But yes, generally speaking, if I was working in multiple layers on a painting, then I would definitely build up the lights and also put more texture in the lights as well, because where there's more light, you see more texture. So you can really kind of work the paint and put it on pretty thickly, especially if you use lead white, and get a really nice texture in the light, and then nice, softened, mysterious shadows. You know, could soften this edge out here a little bit, make it look like it's kind of disappearing into nothing, into shadow. Like I tend to overdo these things deliberately because I like the atmosphere. Okay, so what did we have? We had our Munsell scale. So if you look in the comments, you'll see a link to this where you can get it on eBay. It's only $10 and it's outrageously useful. Kind of wishing I'd been a bit more careful about my little spots, but there you go. We mixed values to match here. And then really after that, it's just all about the edge handling. Whacking it in, whacking it in on the panel, and then edge handling. Now, one of my favorite ever things to do is to lose an edge as well. So you see here, like the values are almost the same. I can paint right across that edge. There's something happens when you do that. I'm not sure what it is. It just seems to give the whole thing a little bit more life and depth. What is the Munsell value of your mixing palette? Very good question. I think it's about a 5. Let's put the thing on and see. It's very slightly darker than a 5. It's like 4.5. I would love it if it was a 5, an exact 5, you know, and then I could kind of use it a little bit for, you know, it would make some things easier. I don't have enough occlusion shadow. Let's get that really. Occlusion shadows really make something pop. So this should be very, very dark down here. Occlusion just means light can't get in there. And it's the best way to make an object really sit on a surface. Soften that just a little bit with my dry brush as well, which is not so dry now. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the session. So tomorrow I'm going to be live again, same time, 4 o'clock my time. Not sure what time that will be your time. But do pop along, it'll be fun. I'm going to be doing colour mixing and maybe a little bit of painting as well, but mostly just colour mixing. You can always subscribe to my blog if you want to make sure that you don't miss the session. I will be sending out links and posting them on Facebook tomorrow. I'll also post the replay URL for this little session that we did today. Oh, just something's really annoying me. This is, I'm always at this bit and I'm like, oh, if I just sort that out, it's going to be a little bit better. Shape of my apple is totally out and I want a hard edge there. When I've been nattering and flicking paint about, I've kind of lost my, lost the shape of my apple a little bit. Oh, and here's another nice little thing you can do. It's not strictly there, but if I really bring up the value just around the apple, it's really going to make that little bit of it there pop. As long as I don't mess up the edge handling along the way. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed it, this little session today. Do come along tomorrow and Thursday and Friday. And over the week, we're going to get to a point where we actually will have finished painting. You can download all of the reference photos that I'm using in the comments as well. And if you're on my email list, then you'll also get links to them too. Thanks very much. And